what is being done for the organizations which are early in their cybersecurity journey, trying to grow through their maturity? What is being done for them, or what do you recommend be done for them?
Okay. See, Pramod, from my understanding that many of the times what happens that we were talking about generative AI, we are talking about uh, cybersecurity at a very advanced level with the continuous threat exposure management, the vulnerability assessment and penetration testing, and the resources, human factor, which has to be on the high side. But yes, there are organizations which are not at the par, not at the even basic infrastructure is not up to that level. I think that it totally depends on to their approach, how they have taken it so far.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next session of Cyber Sierra Safe Tech Talk series. We have with us Gaurav. Gaurav, you have done a lot of good work in the industry. I would love for you to share your introduction. Please let us know your journey so far.
Yeah, thanks, Pramod, for having me on this podcast. My name is Gaurav, as you already mentioned, that in industry for last 27 years, presently working as Chief Technical Officer for RH Infotech Private Limited, which is in a validated distributor for cybersecurity, having a legacy of 18 years in industry for providing uh, products as well as the services to our premier customers as well as the partners on providing and evangelizing on different technologies and concepts and the solution scenarios. Looking forward from my perspective personally, I've been in industries from all corner of the tables. Been as a consultant, being as an advisor, the solution architect, as a partner on the distribution as well as onto the system integration perspective. I've been working for many organizations throughout globally from the perspective of a domain in India, be it into healthcare, education, hospitality, law enforcement agencies, telcos, and finally into any perspective where the solution has to be devised for the digital transformation. I'm certified into many advanced technologies like CCIE, CISA, CISM, and multiple technologies altogether started since 1997. Been there with the companies like NIT Technologies Limited, then WEM Technologies, Ignitio, that's a Spanish company. Had my own entrepreneur journey for 4 different organizations in India as well as in Middle East, the Saudi Arabia, and in United Arab Emirates. And then independent consultants, been there with Ericsson, Sterlite Technologies, have worked very large and mega scales of projects, which I have architect as well as operated and executed from the perspective of a large scale. Like the Delhi Safe City architecture, that's personally my design and work very closely with the organizations. I evaluated them as well. So the Telangana Fiber, the PowerTel, their entire edge data center RFPs and operated and designed there. Nowadays, I'm quite elevated to work closely with the different public sector units, government organizations, Fortune 500 companies to work very closely with them on security operations centers for the design and managed services approach. So far, in the last 27 years, this is a kind of a job I have done in industry.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing about your journey. This it's been an illustrious and long career, and I wish you many good years ahead as well. Over time,
Thanks.
you definitely develop a strong leadership style, Gaurav. So could you share a little bit more about your leadership style? When we were preparing for this podcast, you mentioned something
Yeah.
called techno business approach. Can you share more about this?
Right. See, Pramod, that like the kind of an illustrious experience I do have it. That whenever been joined with any of a partner or with a customer, as well as on my own organizations, that the founders were expecting quite a lot on the perspective of that how this entire technical acumen, which has to be with the knowledge of a commercial aspects. So the whatsoever the experience you have it from the perspective of evangelization to understanding their customers' expectations and providing those particular solutions. It's in terms of that you have to understand what is the best of the TCO as well as with the ROI of any of a solution which you are proposing. Technologies are coming day by day in different forms, in different solution perspective, but you have to understand the customer's version as well, and then to look after their commercial side as well. So nothing to be hype on the very high side that only the technology had to be sell it as a box seller, but you have to understand the customer's pain and then to look at that the commercially should be viable with the customer as well. And that techno-commercial aspect has to come into the picture, and where the leadership has to come with the resources. So you are going to be hired for the technical team that to look at from the perspective of that how this entire amalgamation of the technical plus commercial, the benchmark has to work together. So nowadays, it's not just only the technical expertise you must have it. You have to keep in your mind that how this is going to be commercially viable to the customer as well. So that is the more important aspect that what we normally looking into that scenario where the leadership has to come in a forefront and then to take a lead on that side.
Gaurav, in your point of view, what are the top cyber threats that companies have to look out for today, and what can we do about this?
Wow, I think that's quite elaborative subject, and it's a subjective description for this way. I think when you look at that from the perspective of the threats emerging, we have to look at from the two aspects. One, whether the organizations have the entire infrastructure, and still there are certain loopholes which they found either into the configuration sides, which is like as a human factors, which they normally look into that, and then the third threat aspects or the threat actors which are coming intentionally acting on their networks and then putting some risk on their entire infrastructure. And the other way around is that there are certain gaps in the infrastructure, and then they presume that everything is right in their infrastructure scenarios. But now what happened that there are multiple attacks. There are multiple scenarios where these attacks can be vaporized as either it will be like as external threat actors, or it will be like as an insider threats from any of the source, whatever is happening on that part. But I believe that that the basic rules which need to be addressed, that the appropriate mechanisms or methods have not been deployed by the infrastructure designers or the security designers, which makes the loopholes in every aspect. So when I look at that from the perspective of the different types of attacks which are coming in a way where the organizations have to look around and then to say that we never presume that such kind of an attacks can come into my infrastructure. That either it could be a DDoS, either it could be a DNS poisoning, or it could be a ransomware attack with any of the poisoning which is happening over the misconfiguration of the different devices. The insider attacks of the accessibility of the admin rights have been taken by the insider users itself. And then zero-day attacks for any of the device or the technologies which has not been verified or any of a test had not been done on any scenarios. So I think categorization of any attack to say that it's a most common or new threats. I think it's an evolving industry. Day by day, we are getting emerging threats which are coming onto our network or infrastructures, and it depends on to the vertical to vertical basis that how it has to be. It has to be looking from perspective of that how this is going to penetrate into my network, and then to looking on to those scenarios where certain either financial repercussions which has to be coming on to the financial industries or into any of the website which has been hosted by certain organizations, and then having business scenarios which is going to halt their entire set of operations. So finally, in my opinion, that every attack is an attack, and then the threat vectors are coming by any mode, which is increasing day by day. Either it could be from the mobile, from the laptop, from the IoT devices or the sensors with the new technologies, the tools which has been deployed without any test, appropriate test has been vetted on that. I think the attack vector is increasing day by day for us.
So Gaurav, would you agree that when the attack vectors are increasing, it is also happening at the same time that attacks are becoming more frequent, automated, and at larger scale. Is that something that you see as well?
Yeah, I think well, let's involve AI in this concept. I think that with the inclusion of artificial intelligence and the tools like as a GPTs, which is increasingly day by day by the users and automating their kind of a threats, the attack vector is quite enlarging, and the it's more like as that they are always one step ahead than what we presume it as the secure infrastructure. When we take it like as a 10 years ago, it was only the firewall or a UTM has to be presumed like as the best guarantee for any of a security to be placed in any of an infrastructure. But as we grew in the infrastructure of the digital transformation journey, what we found that every attack is coming up with the new technologies. There are different techniques which are coming up to the bypassing any firewall with the IPS or with the NT-APTs or the DLPs on that part. But there is an automation process. There is everything which is coming on at par with the different codes, which is generating day by day. And the basic information is like as a AI, AI cannot be involved into it, and still people are getting trapped into that. That's a phishing. So it's more like as that how your perception would be towards the attack path vector, how vigilant you are towards your infrastructure as a smallest contributor you would like to be on that part. But I think that a small loophole can it's like a small hole can sink the entire ship in a sea or an ocean. That is a similar thing is going to be happening in our infrastructure or cybersecurity scenarios. But with the advent of an AI and now as it's moving towards a generative AI, um, I'm totally devastated. Many of the times, it's a sleepless nights for us, and then to manage as well as design any infrastructure with the security framework. We never know that how the loophole can come out in any technologies or any solution. What we thought that today it's very secure, but tomorrow it will not be.
So in this case, when your attacks are happening in a way that's automated, more frequent at scale, and obviously being driven by AI, and we are also preparing for a world that is post-quantum. For
Yeah.
organizations, would you agree that their defense posture needs to be evolving in such a way that is continuous? It has to be always on. You can't do your scans once a day, once a month, once a year. You have to do
Yeah.
this now constantly. Do you see that happening?
Yeah, Pramod, let's get into a one process. It's a very small example. That's initially, I think, 5 or 6 years ago, that the vulnerability assessment and penetration testing was a process. Um, that every organization by in India, it's like as a by certain there was a certain partners who have to do once in quarter, once in 6 months, or a once in a yearly process. But now, as the evolving threats are coming, and day by day, like that we have to have our teams continuously sitting as a red teaming or the blue teams who have to practice the entire thing. The tools have to be evolved into a process of a continuous threat exposures. Now, when we say that it means that you have to be every time on your toes and then to find that if there is any vulnerability by any packet which is coming into your traffic, is it going to be a malicious one? And so the kind of an infrastructure we have it nowadays, it's like as a combination or amalgamation of the Kubernetes, the Dockers, the virtual images, with the OpenShift containers. That when you look at that, the size of the projects and the size of the digital transformation which is happening, it's very hard to rely on certain process which you have to do once in a quarter or 6 months. You never know that whenever any of a single packet is coming and then encrypting your entire infrastructure, and it seems to be a ransomware attack, and then finally you are into a mess for this. So you have to have that continuous exposure, threat management, different tools or the mechanisms you need to identify within your infrastructure, and then to find that what are the, because quantum is another one, right? The one way that we wanted to secure enough that okay, there is a man in the middle attack which you can do with the quantum generated random keys, which can secure your communication, but there is a quantum computing as well, which can decrypt that part at any point in time. So by looming into the future, and then what we are perceiving in next generation, and then the tools are industry is quite vigilant itself when they are coming up with these particular tools. And specifically, if I'm not to mention few of the products, we are also already in a distribution, and we are proposing that to the many of the customers. And even one of our SOC, that's what we have built it at our company, that we have already deployed with the continuous threat exposure management, which gives the entire attack path vector within your organization, as well as an infrastructure, which gives the proper visibility how your entire infrastructure can be secure, and what are the different loopholes or the points which are blank, and that you can there would be a chance of a penetration by any open source. So it's a proactive approach, and that I think that the demand of the industry as of now. I think by day, another year, we are going to look out for the other technologies which will be looking at from the source itself. If any of attack is going to be perceived, then it has to be blocked by the source itself. But as of now, we are looking at the destination, how we have to identify and detect those loopholes at proactive approach.
So by proactive, you mean continuous, and there's continuous
Yeah.
threat exposure management. There's continuous red teaming, continuous blue teaming, continuous monitoring, continuous controls monitoring, all kinds of
Yes.
continuous. Everything has to move into the world. That's like a paradigm shift now that's happened, right?
Yes, I think from the last couple of years, in India especially, I will not speak about the APEC and Middle East countries, because they were quite proactive in their approach. They were quite proactive while adapting or doing some proof of concept for the new technologies which has been given it to them. And now, if you see that the most of the major events which is happening for the cybersecurity, that's been loomed in the Middle East as well as in APEC countries, and most of the tools which has been generated, that the source of those developments are coming from APEC countries, by Singapore itself, right? Now, if I talk about the Indian subcontinent, that yes, this approach has been shifted for last couple of years. Earlier, the people were very reactive. I'm in the cybersecurity industry for almost 23 or 24 years. In 2003 and 4, I already started my career in cybersecurity by that time, though I was in software and networking in that paradigm. But when I looked into that, by that time, nobody was interested into cybersecurity. It was purely on a reactive approach. If something will happen, then they will react on that. But they don't want to. They never wanted to invest any of their money or the resources in cybersecurity, and it was a complaint for many of the CTOs, the CIOs, and these terms now are very frequent. But earlier, it was never been given to any kind of a respect to any technical professional by our business owners. But now, what happened that just a couple of years after that, certain attacks had happened on financial institutions, the government reputed organizations. Government has also given a quite their approach, a proactive approach towards the industry, and then they have also given a focus that how this industry has to take a ride on that part where the proactive approach has to be taken. There are certain penalties. There are people who have been fired with that, and then get penalized for their laziness, their weakness, that they have not adapted proactively on that part. So I think that the organizations in India nowadays, it's quite proactive. The many of the cybersecurity events which are happening, that like as a full of the year, like hardly initially there was like 1 or 2 events were happening in India, but now I can see that every single month there are like 18 or 20 different events where invitations are coming to us for the cybersecurity, and many of the times we have to speak for that perspective, and many of times we thought that it was just like a repetitive of that what we have spoke earlier in those particular events. But now industry wants to learn, wants to hear it out, that what exactly the use cases, what exactly the different cases, how they want to relate with their stories. They want to relate with their case studies on that part, that how's their infrastructure. Yesterday, I was there with one of a group of CISOs of 35 with the government entire industry. The one of the CISO event was happening, and I what I observed that everybody was curious to know about that how their infrastructure should have a best practices to deploy every single security component, whether the firewall has to be in front of a IPS or IPS has to be behind the firewall. That is a very crucial question nowadays. It's earlier it was just okay that wherever the vendor has deployed it, that's deployed it. But now everybody wants to know about that. Okay, that's a shift which has happened. Earlier, people used to say, "Oh, that happened. Attack can happen in your network." But now they are asking us that how that attack has happened, and if you have shown the demonstration, that let us know that the step by step that what are the different technologies in that. So customer is quite vigilant now. Customer wants to know about each and every aspect. Um, it's I think the evangelization at the ground level, which is still yet to be done. At it's not 100%, but yet yes, I would say that it's happening now, and people are quite vigilant. Customers are looking forward that there shouldn't be any impact on their infrastructure, and they wanted to do every single thing. Yes, ROI is always a concern for the governments, for the public sector units, for the law enforcement agencies, as well as the Fortune 500 companies. Everybody is asking for that, but still, they need appropriate proactive manners, best practices, solutions which can secure their infrastructure.
Gaurav, this is beautiful what you just shared. You've been in the industry for 23, 24 years, and you also outlined some changes that you have seen in the evolution of the industry. What you have seen, right? One is that people used to be less concerned; they are more concerned now. Cybersecurity
Yes,
was less of a discussion; is much more of a discussion now. Um,
yes,
you see the government taking it more seriously. Cybersecurity incidents have become a lot more frequent as well as now
yeah,
discussions around cybersecurity has become more frequent. One thing that's
yeah.
remained, however, is that this is still viewed as cost, right? And there is a lot of discussion that needs to go into what should I put in place and what is the ROI of this? How do you navigate such discussions where cybersecurity is
Okay,
viewed as a cost center? How do you navigate such a
yeah.
discussion?
Okay. I think ROI could be at the later stage. Yes, we always have to keep in our mind before the discussion has to be started on that. Firstly, our and it's like as a, every single sales, not from the technical perspective, but we need to understand what is a pain point. I should not talk about something which they are not concerned about it. I just need to know that what is the pain point, what are the use cases that firstly they want to build it up, and that's a priority. That once the priority has been set, so the pain point has been looked into it, that the solution has to be devised appropriately. Whether it is a one pointed product which can solve their problem, or is it like as a combination of different technologies or different scenarios can help them to come out of that particular solution. But when they have to look at the entire perspective, then we have to optimize this entire because as a business owner, as well as to run your own BU, you always want that extra profit or extra the top line has to come on in your kitty, and then the customer that your organization would be very happy that you brought that business. But again, I would say that it depends on to you that you want to win the trust of the customer once, and then be there with them forever for like as a 5 to 7 years, and then every single opportunity will come to you, or once only you will um, just breach their trust, and then to say that okay, this is a technology, this is a solution, without me that this is not going to work, and then they will never come you back. It's always a trust. It's always like as a being as a trust advisor on a technology front. I think industry is always expecting that you should give the vendor agnostic approach, that their solution has to come in rather than just only the product which you want to pitch and you have an extra margin on that. That's not going to work in the industry. That it's always like as a two or three different technologies you have to evaluate. You have to show that the pros and the cons of each and every technology, and then it's a matter of the fact that the once the trust is in your favor, the customer will always look in towards you, and then to say that okay, this is what I wanted, and you should evaluate it, that whatever is going to be fine for my organization. So ROI will always comes along with that trust, along with that solution, along with that perspective. And I think that the approach for the last 27 years in my life, whatever I have done so far with my customers, um, with the prospects, be it into my Indian subcontinent, APEC, Middle East, African, European, or American customers, wherever I have gone, wherever I have done my solutions, wherever work on that part, the ROI was quite enormous, working very quite fine. Even in this one, where we are working right now, it's an enormous one. That the trust which we have taken from our customer. Customer always wanted to be with us, and as an organization from RAH itself, we have a 90% of repeated customers. So you can vouch on that particular part that the ROI is coming to us just because of that the trust is there with us from the customer, and that comes in terms of the monetary uh, scenarios as well.
How do you calculate this
Okay, now there are lots of calculations which has to do on a Excel sheets for that. But yes, it's a transaction to transaction basis. It's a long term, as you need to look at that from the perspective of that how it comes on your product. That's a margin only. It's a one time which normally people to have it. But I'm a solution guy. I always look for the solution and the set of the services, and I always believe in that my customer. I'll be there with my customer for the next 5 years. So once in the 5 year, uh, that the approach is coming into the customer's mind, my ROI starts from the very first day itself. And then that if my customer is there with me forever for at least 5 years, so the I should not be worried about the ROI. But the customer will consider my ROI and will say that this is your money and you have to take it.
Thank you for sharing, Gaurav. When you look at India across the whole country, there are some
Yeah,
organizations that are far ahead in their cybersecurity journey, and then there are some
yeah,
organizations that are differing in terms of their maturity, right?
yes,
Have
yes.
a context on what is being done for the organizations which are early in their cybersecurity journey, trying to grow through their maturity. What is being done for them, or what do you recommend be done for them?
Okay. See, Pramod, from my understanding, that many of the times what happens that we were talking about generative AI, we are talking about uh, cybersecurity at a very advanced level with the continuous threat exposure management, the vulnerability assessment and penetration testing, and the resources, human factor, which has to be on the high side. But yes, there are organizations which are not at the par, not at the even basic infrastructure is not up to that level. I think that it totally depends on to their approach, how they have taken it so far, whether they want to remain in that era where still they have to fix one or two different problems at the same time, and then not to look for entire digital transformation. There are use cases, there are the loads which has to be worked on. I think that most of the tier one cities, the organizations already have and evaluated and assessed the lack of a cybersecurity infrastructure. But when there are tier two or tier three cities in India, if I may talk about that, they're still not in a position to grasp that the technology, or might be that the technology has not reached to their level. It's a it's a it's a but obvious that that somebody has said that okay, this is a component which will secure your entire infrastructure, and they should not be worried about it till the time they'll never find themselves into a big mess. Or it's more like as a reactive approach for that. Yes, in other perspective, I would say that we are living in a two different India, where one is totally talking about the very advanced technologies, based cybersecurity concepts and technologies. We are talking about R&Ds, and we are talking about Yara forms. We are talking about that the threat intelligence platforms. We are talking about the Maitre attack framework, where how it exactly it has to work. The SOCs, as the SOC 1 and the SOC 2, the different certifications which need to talk about it. But when it comes onto the other perspective, yes, they do have their use cases, but they don't know how to replicate in their business use cases, and somebody has to approach it. I think it's going to take some time, but yes, the time has to be like as it's like as electricity took almost 60 or 70 odd years to finalize in entire pan India. The similar way that the technology everybody knows about the Android and the iPhone in all Indian villages or the towns. But yes, the technology will come like the same. It will take some time, and the right people will approach and to provide and to do the evangelization, to do some knowledge sharing sessions also. And till the time that the local people, will not take any interest onto how to how to integrate the advanced technologies in their infrastructure, I don't think anybody can force them to do so. So it's again the proactive approach by the people who are authoritative, who have to take a calls, and then finally they have to approach it that how this entire infrastructure need to be deployed it appropriately. That's only the way I think will evolve it. Otherwise, as it's going on, once any attack will happen, and reactively somebody will come and approach, and then the technical teams will land there and then to provide the solutions. But whether that solution is appropriate or not, that's the industry's call, which has to be taken also. many unskilled resources. I won't give this, and I won't take a credit from many of our organizations. But yes, near about to 30 to 40%, we have seen that the solutions which has been provided to many organizations are not appropriate. Uh, it's under the demand that what they have to do it. But the problem is that that has to be integrated appropriately as per the use cases. Without understanding of the use cases, if the solution has been designed, that sooner or later that's going to create some problem, not only for the customer but also from the industry. And being as a nation, that's not going good for all of us.
Thanks for sharing this, Gaurav. When you place India in the context of the global, this decade very clearly belongs to India from an economic growth perspective. A lot of this
Yeah,
is actually getting enabled by digital India, right? So much public
yeah,
goods are getting shipped. A lot of companies are digitizing, they're growing. And many
yes,
of these
yeah,
companies are in differing stages of their cybersecurity maturity, right?
yeah.
If you could just help me in this regard, how would you contextualize the cybersecurity maturity of India in relation to other parts of the world that you have also experienced? Like, how does India
Yeah.
stand relative to other parts of the world?
Right. Um, Pramod, I think India, as you rightly said, that's decade belongs to India. I think even not this decade, but before that, once that digital transformation was a part of it. But cybersecurity has taken a leap in that, and India is definitely taking a lead in this perspective. You may go into any of an event, you see that there is a pavilion, Indian pavilion, Make in India perspective is going on either in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the LEAP, the JISEC, or in South Africa, wherever you go, that there are Indian companies are uh, totally giving a big hype as well as to providing the platform. Most of the customers are reaching out to the Indian companies while looking at their maturity in cyber security. And the government's initiative in a Make in India, what happens that once you are giving extra exposure towards the local manufacturers or the local OEMs who have to develop and then to test their products in Indian industry, and which is the most complex in any scenario. Wherever I have deployed it, almost like except Antarctica, so far wherever the projects I have deployed, what I found that India is always a complex market to deploy any new initiative or any product. If you have tested, verified in Indian market, none of the other world's market, your solution is going to find any challenges. There are multiple reasons on that part, and then with the OEMs which has verified as well as vetted their products in Indian scenarios with the different customers or the volume or the size, because that's going to be the peak volume of their traffic, peak volume of their the threshold, whatever that could be testified on in any products. I think that the rest of the countries have just only to follow those particular steps and then to adapt that technology. So while looking at that technology's maturity, I've seen that those periods where the few of the OEMs who are very at the very early stages and they were not able to cope up with the certain products, but by the time they have matured, they have grew up from 0 to 100 at this point in time, and they have contributed the society, the technology, the industry, and now grown up into the international arena. That many of the companies are there with us that even have gone internationally and have very conceptualized projects in the industry, and they are doing very fine. They are working very closely with the different governments of all the continents, either from the Middle East, with the African governments, with the APEC countries, as well as in the European as well, in US as well. So if I may say so, that won't have any kind of a confliction in that part. That right now, whatever the products we have it in India on the cybersecurity platforms, none of our other countries in the whole world can match it with those technologies. And many of the times, they're the people like from Korea, from Japan, as well as from European countries. They have approached us and then to ask that how these particular technologies are working, and they have asked us to give us a demonstration for that. So that gives a sense of satisfaction on the Make in India perspective, that how these companies have grew exponentially in maturing their technologies in cybersecurity and having a leading superpower in coming years as well.
Thank you, Gaurav. What is your hope for cybersecurity in India for the next few years? If you had a magic wand and you could wave it and get whatever you wanted, what would you like?
Uh, I think everything is going in a right way, and nobody has to have a magic wand to do so. It's a by the time the people are getting evangelized, getting knowledge on that perspective. The universities are reaching out with the new courses, new education system on that part. I think social media is quite elaborative in that perspective, where they are contributing. That how these new reels, which is if you appropriate channels you have subscribed on the reels, that the it's a quite vigilant for the youngsters who have to adopt for the cybersecurity. Government also have taken certain initiatives. State governments also have taken some steps into the cybersecurity programs for their employees, for their vendors. The new acts which has been acted as in the DPDP Act, which has opened many of an eyes, where it was like as the RFPs were blindfoldly just passing out by the vendors or by the customers. But now it's been very proactively. They have to look at that what is the data privacy laws or the conditions in that RFP, the terms for the penalties which has been provided for any of an execution of that project. Uh, every single individual who is having an Android and the iPhone in their hands, they are very concerned about that the data, their images, their pictures, their personal data should not be leaked to any third party. I think it's a by the time that the people will evolve themselves into themselves as a warrior for the cybersecurity, and it's a contribution has to come from every single individual to the society that to secure your nation. We don't need to have a uniform and to be there on the border to secure our nation. I think we being as at the home, being as a housewives, being as any of a contribution, being in your business or a school or colleges, universities, wherever your business is there, wherever your occupation is there, that you have to contribute to your society in terms of the smallest portion to secure yourself. I think that's only the way we have to do it. Nothing to educate anyone on that part. Nothing to tell that you have to do some exceptional work on that side. It's a generation, and I think that the youngest nation in the whole world, which we are going to come in this particular decade itself, we are going to have that the growing force in cybersecurity, and we are going to lead the entire world in that field.
Thank you very much, Gaurav. It was a pleasure having you on this session today. Thank you for being generous with your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Pramod, for having me. Thank you. It was a pleasure.